It's almost the witching hour, which means that it's nearly Halloween itself. And I have to apologise because I'm a few reviews behind, but don't worry, I'm going to get to the rest of them over the rest of the day in time for the end of Halloween. I was just taking a little bit of time to get myself righted after that horrible man flu. But anyway, I'm feeling much better, and here we go with the rest of my reviews. So the 26th film in my 31 Horrors of Mike is the 1935 movie Mark of the Vampire. Now some people regard this film as more important than actually good or of a certain quality to the horror genre, and I'll explain why in a minute. Mark of the Vampire would reunite Todd Browning, who directed the 1931 film Dracula, with the star of that movie, Bela Lugosi, and it would once again try to cash in on the vampire mythos and try to explore it, but this time in a very particular and pretty special way. It's quite clever in my opinion. So Mark of the Vampire is about a small town in Prague where a nobleman dies, and the locals blame this on a vampire called Count Mora and his vampiric daughter Luna, who apparently rise from their graves late at night to wreak havoc on the people who live nearby. The police obviously think that this is a lot of nonsense, but when a year later another member of the nobleman's family becomes ill and it seems that she is being attacked by a vampire, the police bring in an expert. It's your basic Van Helsing character, played by Lionel Barrymore, who many of you will know as Mr. Potter from one of my favourite films, It's a Wonderful Life. So the film progresses as the characters in the film try to come to terms with this vampiric force, and we get to see Bela Lugosi as the classic vampire once again, as the forces of good and evil go at it. Now here's the issue with the film, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but it does have a twist, and it's a twist which some people don't like. Now here's the thing, Mark of the Vampire, I remember watching it as a child and enjoying it, liking the atmosphere, and then not liking the twist, but as an adult I can really appreciate it, and I can appreciate the film on a whole bunch of different levels. Now, this is one of the main problems with the movie, is that some people think it's an absolute classic, and others believe that it has some severe problems and is actually a wasted opportunity. Bela Lugosi himself felt that the film was a wasted opportunity, and the twist in the film took the movie in the wrong direction. However, Todd Browning was in fact trying to create a pseudo remake of a film that he'd made called London After Midnight. Now, London After Midnight is one of the most important horror films ever made, in that it stars Lon Chaney, in many people's eyes the king of horror, and it's also lost. There are no surviving prints that anyone knows of. The last few prints unfortunately perished in a fire. So the only thing that we have from London After Midnight are production stills, and some of those stills are actually really famous. The makeup that Lon Chaney used for the vampire character in London After Midnight is really famous in of itself, and a lot of people don't even realise what film it comes from. It's just a really striking image. But Todd Browning had made this film earlier, and Mark of the Vampire is in many ways the closest we're going to get to London After Midnight. While there are a lot of elements which have changed, the central premise to the movie is still the same in many ways, which is the police investigating a supposed vampire mystery. So it's important from that point of view. We get a glimpse at maybe what London After Midnight may have been like in some ways, but also Mark of the Vampire is incredibly important because it created a whole new genre of horror movie, the self-aware horror film. Now, by the 1940s, people started making fun of the Universal horror movies, but in 1935 people were still in the grips of horror fever. They still loved the horror monsters that Universal had been creating, and for Todd Browning to come back and make this film after the dismal performance of his film Freaks, which had pissed off a lot of people throughout Hollywood, it's quite a testament to him that he tried to do something so brave by making a film which was so different. Now, if you look at films in the sort of postmodern era, like Scream, Cabin in the Woods, Shaun of the Dead, these are films which poke fun at the genres that they're in. They point out what is weak about them and what doesn't work, but they are also, in their own rights, a good entry within that subgenre of horror, and that's the same with Mark of the Vampire. Whether you like the twist or not, it is a good vampire horror film, and it's great to see Bela Lugosi playing that character again. Now, there is a lot about the film which is obviously aged badly. There are some hammy special effects. However, there's also some striking cinematography which makes the film in many places, to me, more surreal and eerie than Dracula, which is the film which people are much more familiar with than over Mark of the Vampire. In fact, I don't really find Bela Lugosi frightening in Dracula in a lot of ways. I think the reason for that is that his he had such a unique delivery of how to play that character with his slow, laboured Eastern European accent that people started mocking it and mimicking it, and because of that, in a lot of ways, I think that original Dracula film loses its impact. It must have had a huge impact at the time, but I think it's lost a lot of its impact because that. I still love the film. I still think it's effective. I still think it's great watching people figuring out how to put together a talky horror film, but I think it does suffer basically due to its own success. However, Mark of the Vampire actually manages to be genuinely frightening in places. There are a couple of shots in the film which I think are quite creepy. There's one in particular of Count Mora, played by Bela Lugosi, as he's slowly coming towards two characters, and it's just so stark and stagnant, and it's the lighting and the way Lugosi's playing this wraith of the night. There's something about it that just really creeps me out when I watch it. The film has a lot of one of the biggest problems that the film has is the fact that it has had at least 20 minutes cut out of it. Mark of the Vampire comes in at just over an hour, so it's a short film. It's short for a feature film, even in 1935, and there's a whole subplot which was cut out where there's supposed to be an almost incestuous relationship between Count Mora and his daughter Luna, which for the time makes it a very sort of controversial film, or would have made it a very controversial film. So because there's been so much cut out of the film, and that was by the studios, not by Todd Browning himself, the movie doesn't make sense in places. There are plot holes, the pacing's all off, and even the twist at the end is just very sharp, very sudden, almost like a gag. Maybe that was deliberate, I don't know. I keep hearing something dragging against my window pane, which isn't good, I don't think, at this time of night. I think it's the hedge outside and it's awful windy. So anyway, just went on a tangent there. So the film itself is very fragmented and uneven because it had such large sections cut out of it. But regardless of that, it's still a solid horror film to me, and it's one which is important for a variety of reasons. Like I say, it sort of almost created a self-aware horror genre which many films have followed in its footsteps. It brought Todd Browning back with Bela Lugosi. Seeing them reunite for one last time was really great, and also the character Luna, who Count Mora's daughter, she is very much the template for many of the feminine monsters that we would see later on, like Vampira and Elvira and people like that. They really took a lot of the horror hosts and things like that, and even people like Morticia from the Addams Family. You can see that they all took influence from this one character, Luna. So there's a lot in it that it's got a great legacy, and that's what I'm saying. The legacy may be greater than the film itself, but if you are a horror fan, it's absolutely worth checking out for some great moments of cinematography, for a film which tries at least to be clever. Whether you believe it's clever or not is entirely down to you, but it's a film which I think manages to achieve a lot, and it's been much maligned for that, but it is something a little bit different, especially for the time it was made. So that's Mark of the Vampire. Go and check that out, and I'll be back shortly with another horror review. Bye for now. Horrible man flu. But anyway, I'm feeling much better, and here we go with the rest of my reviews. So the 26th film in my 31 Horrors of Mike is the 1935 movie Mark of the Vampire. Now some people regard this film as more important than actually good or of a certain quality to the horror genre, and I'll explain why in a minute. Mark of the Vampire would reunite Todd Browning, who directed the 1931 film Dracula, with the star of that movie, Bela Lugosi, and it would once again try to cash in on the vampire mythos and try to explore it, but this time an empiric daughter, Luna, who apparently rise from their graves late at night to wreak havoc on the people who live nearby. The police obviously think that this is a lot of nonsense, but when a year later another member of the nobleman's family becomes ill, and it seems that she is being attacked by a very particular and pretty special way. It's quite clever in my opinion. So Mark of the Vampire is about a small town in Prague where a nobleman dies, and the locals blame this on a vampire called Count Mora and his vampire. It's almost the witching hour, which means that it's nearly Halloween itself. And I have to apologise because I'm a few reviews behind, but don't worry, I'm going to get to the rest of them over the rest of the day in time for the end of Halloween. I was just taking a little bit of time to get myself righted after that.